Everyone's after the perfect home, the perfect deal. And that's how you miss out on opportunities that you're going to look back and say, if I just bought a year earlier, the price appreciation would have hit the deal out of the park. I didn't need to wait for that deal. I could have just got the right home for the right price and then sat on it for a couple of years. And now I can afford my next home, which could be my dream home. Welcome to the Real Estate Podcast. This is episode number 322. And today we're going to be talking all about first-time home buyers. So I hope you enjoy.
Welcome to the Real Estate Podcast, your go-to source for raw, unfiltered stories and expert tips. Whether you're a buyer, seller, tenant, landlord, or realtor, join us as we dive into the world of real estate.
Welcome, Sherry.
Thank you.
I didn't realize this was your first time on the podcast.
First time ever.
Yeah. Sherry just celebrated his 1 year anniversary with the team not that long ago.
Yes.
Yeah. You made it this far. Congratulations. That means you're good at what you do.
You've outlasted, I don't know, what's the stat? Like 70% of new real estate agents?
Yeah, like 60%.
Oh, you're talking in the industry.
In terms of how many people don't last beyond the first year.
Well, the stat, I'm curious to see what they look like from 2024 because the stat of people that start their courses and don't actually end up finishing their courses.
Oh, that's got to be
huge.
I know countless people that have done that.
And yeah, me too. They all say, "Oh yeah, I want to join your team and this and that. I'm gonna start the courses," and then it's like,
well, the fear,
they get through the first one, or if they're lucky, they get through the first one, and then they realize there's 4 more courses to go. And
I think for a lot of them, it's the fear of getting in and not having that stable income.
Yeah.
Right? Like going from...
He had the same fear though, right?
Well, no, because you didn't have an income. Like you weren't employed, were you?
No, I wasn't employed.
Right. Yeah. So your income fluctuated.
Yeah.
So you were kind of used to that.
Kind of used to it, but at the same time, it's still a little scary for sure.
Yeah, anything new.
Because I went from zero to working on the team. So it was, all I did was the courses and then I started practicing with you guys. So I had no experience actually doing real estate.
Right.
So that's why it was a little bit scary.
Well, and you had your moments of uncertainty.
Oh,
right?
For sure.
Where it's like questioning whether or not it's the right choice. And then you push through and all of a sudden you've got a bunch of listings and buyers and leases and...
Definitely. Yeah. So just got to believe and put in the work.
Yeah.
So Sherry's first time on the Real Estate Podcast, and we're going to grill him today. We're going to grill him with some questions. He's also going to be a wealth of information, specifically talking about first-time home buyers today. And it was my idea for the topic because there are some new programs. Adrian and I chatted about them in a previous episode. But now they are in full effect. And there's a lot of news articles, a lot of chat about this being now a good market for first-time home buyers, right? The prices have come down and stabilized. The mortgage rates have reduced. There's new incentives and programs, both from the government and from some banks or financial institutions. And there seems to be a little bit more of a pent-up demand. So if somebody was thinking of buying their first property a few years ago, they may have held off and held off and held off. And now I think we're going to see a lot more activity in the market from first-time home buyers. Would you guys agree?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's usually how it goes in markets too. Like I'm very familiar with the stock market. So even a stock that's fallen a bunch, it kind of just like hovers around the bottom for a bit. But then once someone hears their friend buying it, they want to buy it and then it kind of starts rolling. So I think that's kind of similar what's going to happen to first-time home buyers.
That's why I keep pumping my Amazon stock.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, for the last decade almost, the conversation we would have with first-time home buyers was always, you're better to get in sooner than later. Like in many cases, don't worry about saving up a 10, 15, or 20% deposit. Like, get your 5%, get in the market, because houses are appreciating faster than you can save. So you're actually putting yourself behind every day you wait. But the last few years has been a bit different. The market's fluctuated in ways that we'd never seen before. And now I think we're heading back into a market where we're going to start to see homes appreciating probably at a rate again quicker than most people are saving. And it's probably going to be I think it'll be pretty steady in that positive direction.
Yeah, and probably for a while.
Yeah.
So you mentioned one thing there that we'll start talking about is the 5%, because there was now a change. What was the change, Sherry?
Yeah, there's been a couple different developments that happened recently. The first one being you can now purchase a home up to 1.5 million with less than 20% down, which I think will be super helpful for people who can afford those mortgages but just don't have the down payment. So that'll be very helpful.
So just to clarify, that's for first-time home buyers.
Yeah.
That it's a insured mortgage. So anything less than 20% down is an insured mortgage. The benefit of having an insured mortgage is that the lender also now has insurance. So typically you can negotiate a better mortgage rate on an insured mortgage than you can a conventional mortgage. So right away, and let's just say it's 0.1% difference. Well, that's an incentive, right? That's an incentive to get into the market, that I can buy now a up to $1.5 million home. So a couple that has good earnings, not a lot of other debt. They don't want to buy a condo. They want something a little bit more, or they want to buy in a higher priced market like Oakville or Toronto. It gives them that flexibility. So I think we're going to see a lot more activity in that $1 million to $1.5 million price range. And ultimately, it has that trickle up effect, right? So if somebody is selling at 1.1, what are they buying? Well, they're buying something a few $100,000 more expensive, right?
Yep.
All right. So what else you got for us, Sherry?
Well, that rule also allows you to, for people who currently own homes, it allows you to switch lenders as long as you have an insured mortgage at renewal, without having to go through the stress test as well, which is great. And are we still continuing on the 5% theme?
Sure. Go down the path.
Well, something that I think we'll see that's interesting in the market too right now is we see a lot of homes selling for $999, and this was before the rules went into effect. But that's usually because first-time homebuyers aren't allowed to get an insured mortgage above $1 million. And sometimes you see that first-time homebuyer come in who doesn't need the insured mortgage, and you see the home go for around $1,015,000, $1,010,000. I think now we'll see homes go for closer to $1,020,000, $1,030,000 range, even if they are kind of worth that $999 point that they were at in the past. Just because now first-time homebuyers can push that limit as well.
Right. So if it's a really nice property, they're in multiple offer situation, they can bump themselves a little bit more, which I think naturally may happen by the sellers and the sellers' realtors as well, understanding that now we don't have to price it at below $1 million, although there is that mental, it's like, why does Walmart price stuff at 97 cents, right?
Yeah.
There's that mental barrier, I guess, once you cross that threshold. But now instead of listing that property for $999, you might be even listing it for $1,039,000, knowing that.
Well, I think the most people, like the 1.5, I don't think there's many first-time home buyers spending 1.5. And if they are, it's unlikely they're putting 5% down, because not many can carry that kind of mortgage. But I think the biggest, most profound impact is going to be plus or minus $50,000, somewhere in that 1 to 1.1 range. Just like you're saying, I think there was a lot of homes that were selling for $999,000 when, if you looked at all of the homes that sold for that amount, it was probably a bit confusing about why some sold for that and others did as well, because one may have had nicer upgrades and warranted a higher price point. but it was a hard stop for a lot of buyers in that segment.
Yeah.
So now that'll open up and you'll start to see a bit of a spread in the nicer ones.
Well, that was used a lot in negotiation too.
Oh, yeah.
Like the offer is 99999.99.
Yeah.
And you go back and try and get some more money for your seller, and it's like, no, can't do it because of the cap.
I think just literally couldn't.
Literally could not do it.
Also, a lot of people were at that point removing conditions, so to make their offer more, acceptable to the seller.
Yeah.
But now they might not have to do that, and they might just be willing to pay extra because they're able to.
That's actually a good point, because does that potentially then open up the types of properties that first-time home buyers might actually be interested in?
Yeah.
So now they can go up to the 1.5 mark and potentially have a home inspection, whereas before it was really tough to buy something for under $1 million that first-time home buyers actually wanted to buy and have a home inspection. So that might change a little bit as well. All right. I want to talk a little bit about the first-time home buyer plan. So we were talking a little bit about the RRSPs this morning.
Yeah.
And you did a little bit of note-taking.
Some digging into it.
Some note-taking, we'll say. So what's your thought process? Because you're a savvy investor yourself.
Yep.
If you have a first-time home buyer consultation where you're sitting down with somebody that's thinking of buying their first home, how are you advising them when it comes to RRSPs?
For sure. So it's almost always a good idea to max out your RRSP to take advantage of that, because at the end of the day, the money you put in there, well, we'll start from the beginning. So the money you put in the RRSP, the point of that is to, first of all, save on your taxable income within the year that you do deposit into your RRSP. And the point is that when you finally go and withdraw that money at a lower tax rate when you retire, you'll save a bunch of money on the tax spread. So for first-time home buyers, you're allowed to pull out money early, tax-free.
Up to $60K now.
Up to $60K now, yeah. It used to be $35,000, but now it's $60,000, which means, say you withdraw $60,000 in 1 year to buy a home, you have until October, until the next year, to buy that home for that to qualify as a tax-free withdrawal. And then you can put that money down onto a home, and you just have to pay that back within 15 years. And now you just save tax on your down payment.
Yeah, so to clarify that, $60,000 over 15 years. So what's that? $4,000 every year gets added to your taxable income at that point.
Yep.
Well, yeah, I think you have a 5-year grace period now.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, for anything between, I think it was 2017 and 2022, or sorry, after 2022, it became a 5-year grace period to start paying that back.
Which leads me into a whole other realm of down payments. And Adrian and I chatted very briefly, I think, about it. Sherry and I chatted very briefly about it. I think over the next, certainly this year, but over the next 3 to 5 years, we are going to see a ton of generational gifting. I think there's going to be a lot of parents and grandparents that are helping other family members get into the market. So now with the mortgage rates being much lower, you can get easily now a 5-year fixed rate at 4.5% all day long, even lower in some institutions.
Yep.
That's pretty reasonable if you think about it, right? So the prices have come. We know we had a peak of pricing 3 years ago, pretty much, right? 2022, January, February of 22. And the prices have receded since then. So they've stabilized over the last, we'll say 6 months, relatively flat. So all of the stars are aligning where I see parents and grandparents saying to their younger generations, we're not going to die. We can't take it with us. We're not going to die with it. We can't take it to the grave, blah, blah, blah. They have their homes potentially with a ton of equity in it. So whether they're pulling equity out of their home by way of line of credit, selling those homes and downsizing themselves, I think we'll see a bit of that too. Or just cashing out RRSPs, TFSAs, cash, pulling out the sock drawer money, whatever, selling off some jewelry. I think we're going to see a lot of gifting.
Well, I think I can't speak to it because I don't know exactly how the taxes work with estate funds coming from estates, but I know that estates are taxed quite heavily, and that will probably only increase because they're going to want to put a damper on generational wealth being transferred down.
Mm-hmm.
I believe
there are a couple loopholes in the system, right, when it comes to that.
Well, I think gifting is one of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not taxed on gifting,
right?
I don't know exactly how it would play out, so it'd be interesting to get a professional's input on that. But from a tax planning perspective, you get a lot of people who say, "Oh, it must be nice to have wealthy parents or wealthy grandparents." But I think it's probably would make sense for the younger generations to have those hard discussions with their parents and grandparents to
Initiate
say,
it.
Yeah, say, hey, like, I don't know how you have that conversation, but hey, is there any way I can get some money before you die? But, familiarize yourself with how their estate will save in the long run.
I think that's an excellent point, and we don't talk about that enough. I was actually talking to Jennifer about that last week, that people with a sizable, any size actually, estate, and certainly if they own real estate, should have a financial planner do a proper consultation, because there are a ton of things to know and a lot of loopholes in how whoever is inheriting that money or that property or whatever, the assets, can save money. So just imagine if you have you're 85 years old, your estate's worth $1 million, you've saved your entire life that's everything that you've ever worked for, and you want to pass it down to your kids and grandkids. If the government comes along and takes 50% of that versus 25% of it, wouldn't you rather the money go to your family than the government?
Right, and get to see them enjoying it and benefiting from it.
And then, yeah, exactly. It's not, and I think that's what's coming to realization for a lot of people is this way, if I'm gifting it, at least I get to see them enjoy it, see them using it, make sure they're using it properly.
Yeah.
Right? Like how many people inherit money and then go and blow it on partying, right? At least you have a little bit more control where you can say, okay, well, here's a check for $250,000, but it's specifically to buy your first home, versus just handing them $250,000 and then they go out and buy a Corvette.
Well, there's probably some people you probably don't want to contribute too much towards their wealth, because you know what they're going to do with it. Right.
Yeah. If your grandkid's a crackhead, you might not want to give them that much money.
Yeah. So maybe for some people, it's easier just to write in their will 1% to Johnny, 99% to Susie.
Yeah.
Distribute it that way and don't have to worry about the repercussions.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the tax planner, and a lot of people I feel like do that way too late in their life. I feel like even, and it might be a bit of a stretch, but even for a first-time home buyer, it might be really smart to speak to someone like that as you're getting into your first home, because a lot of people make the mistake of wanting their first home to be their dream home. And it doesn't really make sense, because you kind of want to use your first home as a stepping stone to your second and third. So that's where if you get a tax planner in or a financial planner, it could be really beneficial to kind of lay out your milestones for the foreseeable future.
And hiring a financial planner or a tax planner, oftentimes that's the same person. It's much like hiring a realtor. You got to connect with that person, do your due diligence, maybe interview a few of them before you actually go and hire them. And oftentimes you got to be open to investing with that person too, because they may want to help your portfolio grow. That's how they make money. So you got to do your due diligence on that, but getting the right advice, not just your friend Google, is super important in any stage. You're right. But so to Adrian's point, how you can't just go to grandma and grandpa and say, hey, can you give me some money before you die? But you can introduce them to the fact that there are ways now to be more effective with tax planning for your estate, and maybe introduce them to that person that can help them. So that financial tax planner type of person. So be the instigator from that perspective. Say, hey, I really appreciate that I'm in your will, and you're going to, once you go, that I'll have all of your stuff kind of thing. But
maybe just start mailing them tax planning flyers.
Yeah.
And
when you go over for dinner on Sundays, just leave a strategic magazine on the coffee table.
Yeah.
But it does have to be instigated, because the older generations, they're not spending time and thinking about those things necessarily. And
you hear that?
Yeah.
I heard that.
Are you hungry this morning?
No, not at all.
All right. So let's move on. What else do you want to talk about, Sherry?
I kind of want to continue down that path of first-time homebuyers thinking their first one's got to be their dream home, because I feel like that makes, especially in a market like today where they should be taking advantage of these prices, everyone's after the perfect home, the perfect deal, and that's how you miss out on opportunities that you're going to look back and say, if I just bought a year earlier, the price appreciation would have kind of like hit the deal out of the park. Like I didn't need to wait for that deal. I could have just got the right home for the right price and then sat on it for a couple of years, and now I can afford my next home, which could be my dream home. So just not being so picky on your first home, I feel like, is a very, very smart move.
I agree. It's very hard for them too, though, because it's such an emotional experience.
Yeah.
So when they start to see all the nice finishes and the staged houses versus the dirty one that's rented and poorly maintained, it's hard to get their head wrapped around those minor deficiencies to see the potential in the not so appealing home.
Yeah, exactly.
But it also goes to something as simple as, and Sherry and I were talking about that last week. Why do you need 2 bathrooms? Why does the place why can't your first place have 1 bathroom? Why can't you share a bathroom? Right?
Yeah.
No, everybody wants 3-4 bedrooms, 2.5 bath.
A rec room.
Yeah.
A pool.
Backyard.
Yeah.
Like you can get these 3-story back-to-back townhomes, village homes, for great deals.
Amazing deals, yeah.
Some of them might be a bit smaller than others, and you might only get 1 washroom, but they're all appreciating at the same rate. So just get in the market, and in a few years, you can upgrade.
My first home, I'll tell the story, back in 2004, I think, 2003 or 2004. My girlfriend was away for the weekend. I was bored. I went for a drive. I was going up Dundas just randomly. And I had been thinking about buying my first home because I was in a pretty good job. At that point, I was the finance manager for Aaron Park Lexus Toyota. I was 23, 24 years old and was saving quite a bit of money. I got involved in the stock market and investing in RRSPs very early. So I was lucky that way. But I was on the drive, stopped into the Mattamy office, and I don't know, something just came over me that said, this is a good opportunity. They were building in a new area of Oakville that hadn't been developed yet, which was 25 in Dundas. So now it's a very developed area, obviously, 20 years ago.
I
You're
can't
gonna
help
shit
it.
your pants, bro?
It could be because I'm drinking so much water. That's probably
We
what
gotta
it
have
is.
a mic on that too.
Yeah. Well, I probably picked it up. Maybe Robbie can enhance
Yeah.
Adrian's stomach growling or squealing, whatever it's doing. Anyway, so I walked in, I was having a look, and they were the very first release of village homes. So the back-to-back town homes, as people now know them. And this was a new concept because they hadn't built that before. This was the first time they were releasing it. And I hadn't seen that before, where you're attached at both sides, you're attached at the back, and you have no basement. But it was $199,000. And I said, okay, I'll take that one. And it was within 15, 20 minutes maybe. And the lady's looking at me like, are you sure? I said, yeah, I have a check in the car. I don't know. At that time, that's when you carried around checks. So I went, I got a check, and it was, I don't remember, like a $3,000 initial deposit or whatever. And I came home and I said to my dad, I bought a house. He said, what? Yeah, I bought a house. I just went to the Mattamy sales office and I saw one there and I bought it. And he says, where is it? And when I told him at Dundas and 25, he goes, way out there? We were living in Clarkson at the time. So like Winston Churchill, QEW area.
Was it like 25 minutes maybe? 20
Yeah,
minutes?
not even 20 minutes, yeah. And I said, he said, so how much was it? I said, 200. How much? You paid how much for that?
Did he know what it was at that point yet?
And no. And so that's where it even gets even funnier. So what, show me the house. What is it? So I showed him the brochure. He goes, it's a townhouse. I said, yeah, it's actually, they call it village home. Why is it called village home? Well, it's attached at both sides and the back and there's no basement. He goes, hang on a second. You're attached at both sides like a normal townhome, but you're also attached at the back? So you don't have a backyard? I said, no backyard. And you have no basement? No basement. He goes, what the fuck did you buy for $200,000? The point of the story is it wasn't my dream home, right? It only had one bathroom. Adrian had been there many, many times. It was just a nice, small little townhouse.
But the point is,
I made it my own.
and some great memories there, right? I think the space is what you make of it.
That's right. Yeah. I had a lot of great memories in that place because it was my first place. I saw a picture actually yesterday. I should have saved it. And it was like a meme kind of thing where there was a blow-up mattress on the floor and a TV and a couple of other small things next to the blow-up mattress. And this was in like a living room area. And it said something along the lines of, sometimes you just need to take the step for that freedom and peace of mind.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then 5 years later, not even, 4 years and a bit, and Adrian was in the same boat as me because he had a townhouse in 3-4 streets over, essentially.
Yeah.
And we ended up buying our new homes in Milton where we live today as next door neighbors. And we both took that equity that we made in those homes and used those as the down payment on the homes that we purchased. Without having that equity, it would have probably not been possible for us to buy those homes that have lasted us now 14 years. Adrian might die there. But
it's funny because my intention was, we'll last 5 years, 7 years. Like that was our plan. And so even this at the time wasn't my dream home, but as we
Well,
got
now
older and
your
matured,
kids,
and we've got
your
kids
were
there, and it's
born
like,
there
you know
and
what,
grow
this
up there.
is working out well for us. Like we can make the space work. We finished the basement.
Well, a few years ago, Natalie and I put an offer on a property in Oakville. That didn't work out, and I thought we would be moving. So the last few years, I've thought about, okay, let's start doing things around the house for the preparation of moving. But we both like where we are. The kids are in the school down the street, making friends. You know, our office is, I walk here sometimes. We have the parks, the plazas that have all grown up with us being there. So you never know what that second and third home is, but if you don't start with that first one, then it's very difficult to continue that growth, right?
Exactly. And I'll make 2 points with that. The first one being you also moved into a home that was very manageable for your first home. If you get into, say, a detached home for your very first home, you don't think about the little maintenance items that you got to do. Like you got to take care of your backyard, you got to take care of your front yard, your furnace, your AC. They're going to be larger than they would be in those other smaller homes. So those are things you're probably not ready for your first home. And they can become really costly too. A lot of people don't realize the cost of owning a detached home versus the cost of, like a village home, like you talked about. Even the village homes are just even more energy efficient because they're so packed, right?
I was just going to say, you don't realize sometimes in the middle of July when it's 40 degrees outside and you're pumping your AC 24/7 and you get your hydro bill and it's like $500 and you're not expecting a $500 bill and you're like, oh shit. Or your wife likes to take baths every night, and the water consumption goes through the roof. And you're like, oh man, I wasn't planning on that.
Yeah,
utilities, property taxes, everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to say is in this market, it might be even tough to afford a townhome. So I don't think first-time homebuyers should write off owning a condo, especially with the deals you can get right now. It's insane to see like a studio condo in heart of downtown Toronto going for $350K. It's unheard of in the last 5 to 10 years. So.
Who was telling us the stat about how many condos are currently available for sale in Toronto alone? I don't remember, but
yeah, it was in like upwards of 15,000 or something like that. Yeah,
crazy amount of condos available.
Yeah.
And to that point, it might not be where you want to live, but it would make a good investment and a good stepping stone. And maybe you keep it as a future investment property via getting a tenant in there. So,
or maybe you are buying it just to rent out as well.
Yeah. Although then some of your first-time buyer programs wouldn't apply. So you got to be careful with that.
Yeah, but then you're buying potentially in a market where it's more affordable anyway, so that it's kind of offset at a lower price.
Right. A consultation with somebody like Sherry is a good step to figure that all out, isn't it?
Definitely.
It's the first step.
Yeah.
First step. Should be.
Yeah.
That and a mortgage broker.
Yeah.
If you have a good realtor and a good mortgage broker, I think that's actually where a lot of first-time buyers fail, is not taking the time to get the proper advice. A lot of them think that they know everything.
Yeah.
Well, it's very common that we'll get inquiries on properties that are where a first-time home buyer is a likely purchaser, and they're just calling around looking at properties on their own. They don't have any assistance. They're reluctant to commit to working with anyone or even chatting with someone because maybe it's just in this day and age, information is so readily available that they think they're better off on their own. And I was doing a home inspection recently, and there was some work done to the property by a DIY guy, and we had a builder come in to assess it. And he said something that would kind of correlate into this conversation, where as DIY people have often just enough information to be very dangerous. So they feel very comfortable and confident in doing the work, but they really don't know what they're doing. And in many cases, such as this scenario we were working on, it ended up being very risky and compromised the structural integrity of the entire building. That goes the same for somebody shopping for a house on their own. They think they have enough information available to them. They have all the details on the MLS or whatever website they're using. And so they're just out shopping on their own. But there's so many nuances in the industry they're not thinking about or considering, like things we're discussing now, that would save them a lot of time and energy and probably end up with them buying a more suitable home a lot quicker than if they search for it on their own.
Exactly.
Yeah, great points.
And to go off of that, a lot of people also just have a buddy who's in real estate who they're not really contractually obligated to, or just haven't really had a real estate discussion with them. And they think, oh, by the time I'm ready to buy a home, I find something online, I'm just going to shoot it over to my friend and he's going to help me out. But a lot of the times they skip a really important process, which is something I really like that we do, the first time homebuyer conversation, because you need to speak to them about what their goals are in the future rather than just trying to secure them a property. And I think that's a crucial role of realtors that a lot of people don't understand. It's planning for the future rather than just trying to get a transaction done with you.
It's making an informed decision and making one that can save you money now and in the future with the right advice, with the right person by your side, whether it's determining the value of a property or the nuances of some advising them on their some of these programs, or future planning with a succession kind of plan. This is a 3-year to 5-year move, assuming the market does this and this. And, okay, some people are going to say, yeah, well, look what happened in the last few years. If you bought the house in 2022 as a first-time buyer, now you're screwed because the house is worth much less than what you paid for it. And to that, I would say, yeah, you might be right in some circumstances, but if you had the right advice then and didn't overbuy beyond your means, it just means you might be in that home a couple years longer than you anticipated. And throughout that process, you have been paying down the mortgage. And if you took proper financial advice, you were also putting a little bit of extra money into it or money aside. Because in the long term, there is no safer investment or better investment than Canadian real estate. A lot of people globally understand that. All right, so we've got a first-time home buyer's guide. So if you are a first-time home buyer, there is a free guide that's available on our LinkedIn, our Linktree profile, which is our link in our Instagram profile. So go to our Insta, hit the link, and download the first-time homebuyer guide. Sherry has committed to writing a blog where you'll be able to find some of this information and then ultimately schedule a consult with them if you do want some assistance.
And there's also the money savings tips guide in there as well.
Actually, those two go really well hand together. In hand.
There's just shy of 40 suggestions on ways to earn and save more money to help you get into that house a little bit quicker.
And they're both free downloads available on our Insta link. So go to Kormendy Trott at Kormendy Trott and click on the Linktree profile and just scroll down. You'll see the money savings tip guide and first-time homebuyer's guide there. They are our only 2 guides currently, and they are quite heavily downloaded, so people are liking it. A lot of tips on saving money and then how to use that money to buy your first home. So, and then Sherry's blog will tie it all in for you. Anything else before we wrap up?
Few last-second tips for first-time homebuyers. Make sure you max out all the first-time homebuyer programs, because there's not just the RRSP. There's a first home savings account, which lets you deposit tax-free $8,000 per year up until a max of 40. So definitely take advantage of that as well.
Yep.
Other than that, just don't be too picky. Don't think too much about your first home, but also obviously make a smart decision. And yeah, just take advantage of all the programs out there because those are a huge help for getting into your first home.
Good tips.
Good tips. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for coming on for your first time.
Yeah,
it won't be the last.
Great. I hope not.
He was nervous. He was nervous in the
A little.
beginning.
It
but
doesn't
now-
show. It doesn't show.
but
I'm
now-
not
Good
usually
job.
on camera, so
Now you are. You are in. If you,
for 7-second reels, but
yeah. No,
A little bit different when you can rewind and redo it.
oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Well, nice having you on. You did a good job today, and I'll see you guys next week.
See ya.
Thanks for watching or listening to the Real Estate Podcast, and I hope you picked up some tips about first-time homebuyers. Feel free to subscribe if you want more content like this. See you next time.